Welcome back to My Best Friend's an Engineer. I'm Libby.
And I'm Lexi.
And today we have an interview for you guys with Suzanne. She is going to talk all about what it's like to work at NASA as a controller, talking to the International Space Station. So we had a really awesome conversation about what her job is and like what her educational background is and some hobbies she does on the side. So stay tuned for that. But before we get into it, Lexi, give us an update. Give us your tea of the week. How has your weekend? How was your weekend?
My weekend, it was splendid. So Friday we recorded, very chill day. Saturday, just had some friends over, did some hosted a little fourth thing. And I don't know if you're the same way, but I get so nervous when I host something because I make sure the house is spotless. I set up everything so nice, and I'm like, I know they don't care. Like I moved all of our mail. I was like, I can't have the mail on the table. So it was just funny because I was like, I feel like I haven't hosted in a while. So very chill. Weather was splendid, and then Sunday we did the boat and hung out at my friend's house in the city, and then yesterday just rejuvenated. We did brunch in the city, then I came home. But I feel like after a holiday weekend, today was so hectic. There's so much, so many follow-ups. We were working with a Mexico site, and they were following up, and I'm like, oh, they didn't have, the holiday weekend or anything, I don't think.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many emails did you have in that inbox when you opened it up this morning?
Oh, my God. It wasn't too bad. I think it was only 13, so that's good. That's pretty good. Because I posted, actually, I digress as well. I posted a TikTok, and I was like, it was a joke, one of those memes, I don't know what the sound was. It was like someone saying, oh, don't tell me what I don't need to know. It's like me when I get 42, work emails. And then someone commented, I get 42 during lunch, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, I do, email is oh, that's exactly what I said. I read that, I was like, oh, okay. But I'm thinking, okay, so email is very big in my job, but I don't get that many emails. It's more just, I do my own protocols, my work, follow-ups. It's not constantly sending emails back and forth. So I wanted to ask, how many, because you were in project management, I feel that you get so many emails and updates.
Oh, so I get probably on average 80 to 100. It's terrible.
Really? That's insane. I couldn't even imagine, I don't know, they're just
That's why I get so stressed out at work when I have so many meetings during the day, because then at the end of the day, my inbox is probably not 80 to 100. That's probably me being a baby and exaggerating. Probably more in the 50s. But still, yeah. But I get what you're saying, though, about the Mexican plant or wherever you were working with them, because we work with people in China, and I told them I think they were asking for things on Thursday or something of last week, and I was like, sure, I'll get that to you by the end of next week. There's going to be a little bit of a delay because of the Independence Day holiday, but we'll work on that right when we get back.
Yeah, but it was interesting because I was just thinking it's a lot of comments on my documents is kind of where I get my emails, I guess. They just, you make edits on that. So, but yeah, so other than that, today was just hectic getting it. It's just always a little, it's always slow in the morning. It's just, So, but yeah, how about you? How was your week? You took some PTO. You were busy though. Let's hear all about it.
Oh my gosh, so busy. And I kind of wanted to touch on it in today's episode because I feel even though I have been doing the time blocking and everything, I still feel I'm failing at time management. I actually had a conversation with my boss about this I took PTO on Friday. So him and I had a discussion on Thursday because I asked him, I was just wanted to check in. I just finished up 2 months in this role. How do you think I'm doing? And he was like, no, all good things. Just there's one thing I noticed. Sometimes you write things down and you don't, I ask you about it the next day and you haven't done it yet. And I was like, because I got so much going on, my man. But obviously I didn't, if he's listening, he's going to be oh, shaking my head. No, I obviously didn't say that. But I was just realizing that, I don't know, I've always had a lot on my plate with work, but in this job, I feel I'm still struggling trying to figure out what actually is an emergency and what isn't, because if everything's priority, nothing's priority. So
definitely, yeah,
kind of totally still struggling with that. But
so do you think that they expect you to kind of do bring work home and kind of finish it up?
So that was the thing, and he was because that's kind of what I was thinking. Because I was obviously I'm new, I want to do well at my job, and I talked to my mentors and I talked to my boss, and he was you should not be working more than 40 hours a week, and if you are, there's a problem, and let's figure it out. Because I think people at this company sometimes like one of my mentors was telling me, she says that people will be like silent sufferers and they like won't voice concerns and they'll just like work all this overtime that's unnecessary and then they just like out of the blue quit and everybody's like, what? Mm-hmm. And so my boss, he's so transparent about that. He's like, if you are struggling with time management or something, tell me and I'll help you figure out what you need to work on next. And he's like, you should not think of that as an embarrassment or like you being bad at your job. Like, that is what I want you to do. And so I think that is way different than what I'm used to, you know? So
definitely, because it's like, if you're in the meetings all day, when do you do the work? And like, I never get that. Like, they always set all these meetings and I'm like, okay, someone has to do the work, you know? I don't know. And
so
then it's like they're asking
I'm still
you.
Struggling. I'm still struggling with that. And what I started to do was I asked my mentor, she's like, start blocking off 2 to 3 weeks in advance time on your calendar that says doing work so that people can't schedule meetings there. And I'm going to start doing that. But that's like a little update on work. Life-wise, this weekend was so fun. I felt kind of guilty because I totally neglected my phone and like social media and like, I don't know, it's not that important, but you know, it's something that I like to prioritize, posting on TikTok and Instagram and stuff. And I totally didn't even look at my phone this weekend. It was a complete social weekend on Friday. It was 2 of our friends' birthdays, so we had a birthday party to go to. I see, like, I'm like forgetting even what I did. On Saturday, we went to the Dave Matthews Band concert, and that was so much fun. Brought me back to my college days. We took like a party bus. We like had a little darty beforehand, and then we took a party bus.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun.
I know, we got there at like 4:30 p.m. and the concert wasn't until like 6 or 6:30, so we're just like there having a good time, getting lit just in the fields of Wisconsin outside of our little school bus, and all these buses like pull up, and it's super nice because then we all split the cost of the bus and nobody has to worry about like being irresponsible with driving home or anything like that. So we did that. But my sister came and she went on a different bus that was like a bus full of younger kids, and their bus on the way home broke down and like on the side of the road. Of course. And just like imagine all these drunk kids trying to get home from a concert at like midnight and the school bus breaks down. And so luckily her best friend's mom was at the concert and drove like herself, like her and a friend went or something. And so they caught her friend's mom on the way home and like, please pick me up on the side of the road. So then the mom slowed down and they hopped in and they were like, see ya, bitches. And like just left everybody who was on the broken down bus. But
that's so funny. That's so lucky. Yeah. Okay, and then going back to your first comment though about like blocking off time. So to our listeners, you know, maybe they're starting a new job or maybe they're, you know, at an internship. I feel like you maybe shouldn't do that in an internship though, blocking off time. I feel like that might be frowned upon. But, you know, my manager, I sent him over something. I said, oh, have you had a chance to look at this yet? And he made a comment. He's like, oh, no, let me put some time on, you know, my calendar tomorrow to look at it. And that's when I started realizing, oh, people actually do this. Because I wouldn't want to kind of block off my schedule with, I don't know. I know I've seen some TikToks, people are like, oh, I can see what the subject is. But like if you put the subject like working on X deliverable, like I feel like that's valid. But it's like a good reminder as well. So I totally support that.
That's why I didn't do that in the first place, which sounds so stupid, but I thought I was going to get in trouble if I like blocked off my calendar. I don't know, because I feel like some companies, if you block it off, then they're like, why do you always have your calendar full or whatever? But no, I talked to people and they were like, why would you get in trouble for doing that? And I was like, I don't know. I was just having anxiety and freaking out. But to your point about like the subject title, I've just been making it time to work, and that way if someone does schedule a meeting with me and they want to schedule it over the time to work time, people are pretty good in my company about being like, hey, I noticed you had your calendar blocked off to do some work. Do you mind if I schedule a meeting over it? So that's what I'm like hoping the plan is, but I'll have to let you guys know how it goes.
Yeah, keep us updated. Yeah, I feel like it's like you can always just have that conversation with your manager too. If like anyone's listening and hasn't done this, I feel like just ask them, hey, is this acceptable? You know, I want to be available for meetings, but like, are you okay with this? And usually, like you said, they're not going to say no. It's silly, but you know, just again, get that transparency and paper trail. Like maybe even sending an email and being, because if he comes back and says, or she, not gonna say he or she, but
anyone.
if they come back, and they're like, oh, well, why are you doing this? You're not available. You're not being available. You're like, oh, well, actually, XYZ, you told me on this day, haha. It's acceptable.
Definitely.
So, but yeah. So a little life lesson in our little update.
Life lesson. That's what we're here for.
Yes. Should we get into our tea from our listeners?
Yeah, tea of the week. So if you guys are a new listener here, we do tea of the week each week before each episode. We post a question box on our Instagram so that we can celebrate your wins as well. So Lexi, do you want to start us off with an entry?
Yes. So I will read Brina's entry. So she said she started my first full-time role after being in a contract position the last year. Amazing. I know that is always so stressful if you're in a round of applause.
Round of applause.
I know that's always so stressful because I feel like it's really, really common in pharma to get contractors and then they get like a full-time role, but I know it's really stressful for that period because you're like, okay, I want to do well. So congratulations.
Yeah, I feel like that can probably feel so relieving too, to like finally be like, oh, a little safety net, got the full-time.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
The benefits.
Yeah, that too. Oh my God, that too. Ruth Ann says she is celebrating going on a study abroad in Italy, taking 3 civil engineering courses over there. I am so jealous. I never studied abroad. That is probably one of my biggest regrets of college was not studying abroad. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about it, seriously, try to fit it in because, wow, I wish I would have done it.
Yeah, I completely agree because we had one, it was kind of the same thing, like 3 weeks in Austria, I think, was the engineering one. And I was like, no, I'll get an internship. This was my sophomore year. Ugh, girl. I know, I'm happy with the internship and everything.
Why were we trying to be so professional?
I know. I guess I wish we had a reality check earlier, but you can always cut your internship. You can do an abbreviated one, whatever. Life lessons. What would you tell your younger self now?
Exactly. That's what
study abroad. Go to Austria. Yeah. Okay, awesome. And then I'll close out with Julie's entry. She said she gets to see her boyfriend after 70 days of long distance. Woohoo! That is awesome. Have so much fun. I could not do that. That would be a lot.
I did it with Brett for a little bit, our last semester of college.
Oh yeah, because we started dating, right?
We started dating this summer, and then I had one more semester because I graduated in winter technically. And it was, girl, that is amazing that you're seeing him because I feel you. That was tough.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, you can find those entries if you want to ever submit something good that happened or something. Maybe you have some tea. Maybe something crazy happened at work. But you can submit that on our Instagram. We usually post a story whenever we record, so make sure you're following. On our Instagram, you can go to our bio where we have the Facebook group link, as well as other submission entries. You can dabble. You can go explore and see.
Yes, definitely. And as always, if you guys like this episode, be sure to share it on your social media, tag us, leave a rating and review, take a screenshot and post it to our Google form that is in the show notes and in the link in our bio on Instagram. We're doing a giveaway. So we're going to be giving away someone a $100 Visa gift card. So be sure you're hopping on that. You don't want to pass up that free moolah. And we certainly appreciate the reviews and we love reading the written submissions. So I think with that, any other last comments before we get into our interview with Suzanne?
Nope, I think that's it. I'm excited for you guys to listen.
Today, we have another great guest on the podcast. We're welcoming on Susie. She's going to give us a little bit of background about what she does for work, what she majored in, and all her things that she's up to with being a woman in STEM. So, Susie, do you want to give us a little bit of an elevator pitch for some of our listeners who may not follow you already?
So my account is @AstraSue on Instagram, and it's really just about empowering women in STEM and empowering all kinds of women, but mostly women in STEM. I'm a flight controller for the International Space Station at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center, and that's me.
Awesome. That sounds so cool. Can you give a little background of what a flight controller is and kind of what your role responsibilities are?
Yeah, so I am an operations controller for the International Space Station, and what my duties are is making sure that the astronauts get their science done safely on the International Space Station. So we make sure that they do all of their payload science and everything about their procedures are safe, and we work with the payload developers to make sure that the astronauts are doing everything that they can to get the science out of their payload so that they can continue their research.
Okay, that sounds like such a cool job. How did you get into this? So, like, if someone is listening and they're like, oh my God, that sounds like such a cool job, I want to do it. What did you go to college in? What was your educational background? And maybe if you could touch on, like, any experience you had while you were getting your educational degree to help get you to this point.
Yeah, so I have a bachelor's of mechanical engineering for the University of Kentucky. I started at NASA as an intern in summer of 2016, and then I became a co-op in 2017 until I graduated. And then I became a full-time engineer at NASA doing 3D printing, metal and plastic additive manufacturing for the SLS and RS-25 engines and all kinds of cool stuff for NASA. And then I became a in-space manufacturing engineer for the project office at NASA, developing payloads to get to the International Space Station. And then after that, I became a flight controller. So it kind of just, domino effect into becoming a flight controller. If you want to become a flight controller, though, NASA is hiring flight controllers all the time. We have a center here in Huntsville, Alabama, but we also have one in Houston, which is Mission Control. And all of it is about the International Space Station, and they are literally hiring people constantly.
Okay, this is going to be a silly question probably, but this is kind of going back to your initial kind of description of your job. What is a payload
I was wondering that too.
Okay, I was like, oh my God, I have to ask. I'm like,
should I ask that?
I was like, I can't go this whole interview pretending that I know what it is.
No, that's hilarious. I just assume that people know what that is, and that's a very nuanced, sciencey, International Space Station, NASA kind of situation. So a payload is on either launch vehicles or the International Space Station. For the International Space Station, they're about yay big. They're like 2 feet tall, 2.5 feet across, and it's basically a box for science. And they have thermal plugs and power plugs and water plugs, anything that you could need to successfully run a science experiment in space. So we just use a, blanket term payload for whatever that science is inside. It can be absolutely anything. The payload could be its own facility. Like we have the microscience gravity glove box inside of the International Space Station, and it is its own express rack. It's its own rack on the space station, but it is considered a payload. And then we also have smaller payloads that go inside that rack, and it's like a Russian doll where it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. You just put stuff in it.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that description.
What kind of science experiments, and again, this might be such a dumb question, but I am someone who's not in the space industry, so I'm coming in completely ignorant. So what kind of science experiments are these astronauts doing on the International Space Station?
So personally, I have worked with, there's hundreds of payloads and experiments on the International Space Station at absolutely at any given time. So the ones that I worked on getting them to the International Space Station were all metal or plastic 3D printing, additive manufacturing machines. So we have small scale 3D printers on the ISS, and that's a payload. So our science for that is seeing how we can print in space. But there's also other ones that may be more familiar with. We've grown lettuce in space. We've grown chili peppers, hatch green chili peppers in space, and the astronauts got to eat them. I was actually on console for that, and it was really awesome. But I mean, it varies from, seeds to plants to, we had a Barbie experiment on the space station just a couple, 6 months ago or something like that. And the astronauts, they had a plan. The Barbie Mattel had a plan, and it was okay, arrange the Barbies like this, and then they did it, and they took a picture, and then they're okay, next thing. That's also a payload.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So it could be anything ranging, and I mean, in the past we've had perfume bottles, just taking a picture in front of the window. That's a payload. We had, oh, it's been many years, 5 or 6 years ago, Nickelodeon sent slime into space, and the astronauts like slimed
What?
each other.
That's so funny. That's great marketing for
It's
Nickelodeon.
crazy.
They're like, take a video.
Yeah.
So, is there any payload when, you throughout your time at NASA that you significantly remember that you really enjoyed working on? Like maybe a very interesting one, like the Barbie one sounded interesting, but what was your most exciting one?
So I always love working with the veggie facility, so where we actually grow the plants of their choosing that they actually get to eat. And I loved working with it because the astronauts love working with it so much because it's like a little part of home on the station, right? And I love plants. So anytime that we got to open the veggie facility and the astronauts, they were always just so happy to be working with something green, something, that they created on the station, and it felt a little less like they were floating out in space.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of want to get into a little bit of your day to day as a job as a controller, because it sounds like you've given us like a little bit of an overview of what you've done and worked on. But okay, kind of a multi-part question. But are there multiple controllers, or are you the only controller? And like, are you able to give us a high level day to day of a life as a controller?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, we have two facilities. We have one in Johnson and in Houston, Texas. They take care of all of the life of the ISS and the astronauts themselves. And my facility in Huntsville is all about payloads. So we do every bit of science that the astronauts do on the ISS is through Huntsville. And there's an entire room of controllers. I am an operations controller, so I was really like the person that integrates the entire station in a science sense. And then we have people who are in charge of where things are. That's stowage. We have the rack officers, and they are in charge of sending commands. And then we have the payload operations director, and they're in charge of the entire room. We have data people. We have safety people. This is all just within our own facility. And then Houston has way more than we do, and they are like they control the attitude of the ISS. They control if we're going to hit like a piece of debris. There's all types of people over there, and then we have flight, who is in charge of the whole ISS. And we take shifts, so all positions are manned, at least in Huntsville, 24/7. So we work night shift, we work swing shifts, we work day shift, we work all over the place. Day to day, if you are on console, is you go on for your shift and you sit on console and you are the person present for whatever my position for your payload operations. So we'll have procedures that we look through. We'll make sure that we know all the hazards, all the pinch points, anywhere that the astronaut maybe could ask a question, we have the answer to it. So for the whole 8 hours, and you're there 2 hours before and you stay a little bit after to make sure that all of your logs are done so that the next person coming on knows what to expect. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Libby's face is like, oh my gosh.
I'm just like in shock right now. I'm like, I could not do that job. That sounds like so much work.
It is so much work.
So going off of that shifts, so you mentioned that it's 24/7. How does that schedule kind of work out? Like when you were interviewing for the position, were you told what shifts you might be working? Kind of, if you have to work third shift, or I don't know if I know that the shift numbers kind of vary, but like for third shift for my role, it's like 7 p.m. to like 7 a.m. I think. But can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, everyone works all shifts. So there isn't like you're hired for first shift or you're hired for second. Like everyone has to work all the shifts. And we do 4 days on, 4 days off. And then after each 4 days, you switch shifts. So it's whatever you're scheduled for, really.
Oh, okay. Wait. So that's kind of cool. So is the 4 days on, 4 days off for the entire duration of your job, or is that only when you're on console? Or are you always on console?
So we do console sets where you're scheduled to be on console for so many shifts or whatever, and it's just whatever the schedule is. Sometimes it's 6 weeks, sometimes it's 12 weeks, I don't know, whatever they need from you. And when you're off console, when you're not on a console set, you're doing engineering change requests, operation change requests. We're working with the payload developers to make sure that we are getting them the science they need. We're training new trainees. There's so much to do when you're not on console, and there's even more to do when you are.
Can you talk about managing that type of schedule? Like, what are the challenges with that, or do you really enjoy it?
um, not really. I struggle with sleep changes a lot.
Oh my God, I can
So it's
imagine.
been pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult, yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. Okay. That is crazy. First of all, props to you for doing that job. You mentioned there are these procedures that either you monitor or control or write, or maybe I'm getting it wrong, but could you go a little bit more into that? Are these procedures for how the astronauts can run the science experiments, or what is that about?
Yeah, so they are very, very intricate, detailed procedures written by the payload developers for exactly what they want the astronaut to do for their science. It is written down to pick up this tool from this location. It is precision to like an absolute science. And we all work with the payload developers to make sure that the procedure is correct, with even down to like your wrench that you're looking for is right here in this box. Like we know where everything is to make sure that they're doing it right. And it's even to like turn a quarter turn. It is so precise. And as the OC, I have to know what every single procedure is, how it's going to be accomplished, if it's correct, to make sure that the astronaut knows exactly what they're doing. And I actually had the opportunity to go to Houston on a training trip, and we got to do procedures like the astronauts. We were trained for basically a week to do, like, we did astronaut training, basically. It was really awesome. So the procedures, we're reading them. I'm going on console. I'm like, oh, come on, they should be able to do this, right? And then you get to do it yourself, and you're like, oh my gosh, like it's a wonder that they ever get any of this done ever. And they're perfect at it. They're so good at it. And it's like I mean, obviously they're trained to do it, but it is unreal.
So I do have more questions about payloads. I have so many more questions about that, but I just wanted to go real quick back to the scheduling. So if someone is coming into a role where they do have to work, third shift or a varied schedule, do you have any advice for an individual coming to that type of role?
Make sure that you are very good at changing your sleep schedule. Get an eye mask and some blackout curtains.
Definitely.
That's my advice.
Awesome. So you mentioned astronaut training. What did that consist of when you were at the Houston facility?
Yeah, so astronauts, when they get selected, they live in Houston, and they have a 2-year astronaut training program, which goes from fitness tests to payload knowledge to how to work tools, honestly. So we got to do some of the tool training, which was cool. We have a specific toolbox for the astronauts, and we got to find out like what all they are and how to use them, and we got to actually do some procedures with them. We got to do some of the astronaut exercise equipment. I got to use the treadmill and they have like a bench. It's so cool. And they also have a bike, like a stationary bike. So we got to not really play on them, but we got to like try them out. And they're a lot different with gravity. Without gravity, I can imagine. There's a lot of rules on how to use them, and the astronauts have to do it 2.5 hours a day.
Oh wow.
We got to see full mock-ups of the ISS facility and like walk through it as if we were there in space. And this is the actual stuff that the astronauts use to train before they go up into space, and then they're just on their own, without the trainers there. So yeah, we got to do a full week of training, and it was so cool. It was so cool.
So when you're doing that training, this might be a dumb question, but is there gravity, or is it like a zero gravity tank?
No, it's just on the ground.
Okay.
It's
So
just familiarizing yourself with the payload racks, and the payloads themselves are cold stowage units, and it really just the setup itself of the ISS.
Okay, that makes sense. Sorry, that's probably a really stupid question.
That would have been really neat, though. So the astronauts train in the neutral buoyancy lab, which is just a gigantic pool. And inside this pool is a submerged version of the ISS. So the astronauts put on scuba gear, and they go down there, and they work on, this is for EVAs, which is where they go outside. And obviously that's super scary, because they're not inside. And so they do a lot of their outside training in this pool. So that, I guess, would be their only experience with zero gravity before they actually get to go.
Interesting. So when you send these payloads over, do you have like triplicate samples of these experiments, or do you kind of try to have them do it in one run and see how it goes, or how does that kind of work?
So it completely depends on the company that's sending the payload. A lot of people think that all of the payload science is sent by NASA, and in fact, nearly none of the payload science is sent by NASA. So we ship it, we run it, obviously, but when I talk about payload developers, I talk about external companies that have developed these payloads to send to the International Space Station. A lot of times they're working with groups like the In-Space Manufacturing Group that I worked with before I became a flight controller. So we were working with those companies to make sure that it met NASA's criteria to send it to the ISS. So when we are talking with those people, they have a ground unit. They have a unit that's been on a 0G flight, or as NASA likes to call it, the vomit comet. So we have double, triple, quadruple, tens of the same experiment testing to see if our effects of 0G or micro G has affected the payload in the way that they thought it would, or in even ways that they didn't think it would. Any science is good science, that's what we say. So it's just interesting how they'll look at it on the ground versus what actually is happening on the ISS. And yeah, they have multiple of every single payload, and a lot of times we have extras on board too in case something happens, if there's an emergency, or if something happens to the payload where we can't proceed, or there's this hazard situation. Yeah, so we have multiple usually of whatever the science is.
Do you guys ever have failed experiments, and how do you deal with them if they do fail?
So defining failure of an experiment is interesting because it's actually up to the payload developer to define their failure. The only time that NASA will call off something is if it is hazardous to the crew, which happens. Sometimes a material oxidizes in space and they didn't expect it to, and it's flaking off, and now we have metal flakes, and now we can't proceed because it's hazardous to the crew because now we have metal flakes in a zero gravity environment. You're right. So defining failure, even that payload, they were like, it's fine. We got some science. It's cool. So a lot of times, whatever they get out of it is still good, which is good.
Like any data is
good for
data.
us because that means it's not a yeah, exactly. So it's not like a total loss of science. But yeah, it does happen sometimes. I've been on console where we've had losses of data, or any something happens to the payload, or something happens to the rack that it's in, and the whole rack needs to be closed off, which affects other payloads inside the rack. So that wasn't even affected. So yeah, it's interesting, and a lot of times we just try to mitigate the loss as well as we can. But there's some losses. Not a lot though. We do pretty good.
So can you speak a little bit more about the process to get a payload? Like, you talked about these external companies, and you mentioned Nickelodeon, you mentioned the Barbie experiment. I don't know if it was Barbie, the company that sent it. But so, what is the proposal process? Can I send a payload? Probably not, but just in general, I don't know if you can.
The short answer is yes. But the long answer is there's multiple ways to get a payload onto the ISS. What I was working with in the project office was through small business research initiatives, so SBIRs. NASA works with tons and tons of small companies trying to get their name in the space industry, right? So we will work with them on a yearly basis or multi-year basis and develop a payload. They will develop a payload, and then we'll basically check off on their points and be like, okay, this is good, and then we send it, right? So the short answer being yes is that if you have the money.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how expensive
right?
is
So,
it usually?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I just know that the perfume bottle, before my time of working for the ISS, but the perfume bottle, they just sent the perfume bottle, they took pictures, and they sent it back. That was the whole science. So there wasn't a science objective other than just taking pictures, right? So the pictures were their science, but they still got to send it, right? But if you can argue that your science is actually benefiting space, they're more likely to allow you to send it, I guess. But really, what it comes down to is money.
Yeah.
So,
That's kind of interesting. You mentioned objective. Again, this might be a dumb question, but what is like the bigger picture goal of like sending all these payloads? Like, are we just trying to capture data? Are we trying to live in space? Like, why are we trying to figure out like all these science experiments?
so it depends on who you ask. Um, Personally, my goal with working with ISS, with working with the payload office, um, is to see if it's possible for people to live in space. We've proved that people can live in low Earth orbit, but as crazy as it seems, we're very close to low Earth orbit. If there's a problem, we can get in the thing, we can come back. If they run out of food, we can send more food. Like, it's very close. If we are going to Mars on a 9-month mission one way, it takes 9 months to get to Mars from the Earth. Those types of things are not going to be readily available. If there's a problem, they're going to have to fix it, or something bad's going to happen. It's not just like oh, okay, something bad's happened, we're just going to go home. You know, so the idea that we can make life more sustainable on this Earth or in space is really the future. Honestly, I think that it is. And I think that the ISS has shown over the last 20 years that it's been up there, that we really can become an adaptable society and even maybe a spacefaring society in the future.
Awesome. So exciting. We'll see. TBD.
We'll see, yeah.
So, working with these astronauts, do you know how long they usually stay in space for? And do you work with a few specific astronauts, or how many are there as well in there? Give some backgrounds on.
Yeah, astronauts are usually on 6-month missions to the International Space Station. Sometimes longer, never shorter, really. As with SpaceX consistently sending up astronauts for the crew launches, it's pretty much consistently 6 months at a time. And it varies how many are up there, but usually it's around 5 or 6. And whenever you're on console, you work with all of the astronauts that are US or ESA astronauts. So we do not work with the Russian side. That's just because they don't touch our payloads and we don't touch theirs. Not because of anything, but just that's how we agreed on it. They do come in the galley some and like eat with the crew and stuff like that. So they interact. We just don't touch each other's science. So yeah, we work with all the astronauts, and it depends on how many procedures are happening that day, how much science is happening. Sometimes you'll have one of my position, the OC, or sometimes you have two. So we'll split it up, whichever ones we're working on.
So as the OC, are you kind of like headset tuned into all the astronauts? You can talk with them and that's how you're answering their questions? Or like how are you communicating with them while they're doing all these science experiments?
Hold on, I'll show you my headset. I have it right here. Yeah, so here's my headset.
Oh, so fancy.
Yeah, so it has like this little plug, and then on the other end of this plug is a handheld device, and then you just click it, and that's when you talk. So as the OC, I talk to the PACOM, who then talks to the astronauts. I do not talk to the astronauts directly. My position does not do that. We are too stressed most of the time. So we will talk to the operations director, which is the pod, and then we will talk to the PACOM, who is the payload communicator, and they will take it to the astronauts, and they are the ones that talk to the astronauts.
It sounds kind of similar to like, I'm familiar with like laborers in the field when I was working on power plants, and there was like a supervisor who then would talk to the laborers. Kind of sounds a little bit similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how many payloads do you usually send up a year? Or I know it varies, but can you kind of give maybe an estimate?
So it depends on how much space we have. It depends on if they are payloads that need to be put in a rack. And it also depends on how many payloads come back. I don't even know if I can put a number on it. It's a lot, it's a lot. Probably more than 100, more than several hundred probably. Because sometimes payloads will just go up and then come right back down because they didn't need to be plugged into a rack or anything like that. It was just like a stored, and then you bring it out and then you put it back. Like, I really have no idea. A lot.
So I wanted to ask for anyone listening who is super into NASA and is like, oh, this job sounds so cool. What is the typical background, if you're able to answer, of the people that you're working with? So whether it be like your position, the OCs, or like anybody else that's in your room speaking with the control center and all this stuff.
You know what's interesting is we have all kinds of backgrounds. Like, I think of the OCs, most of them are like biologists. We have 2 geologists.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's not like it's usually a STEM field, but it's not exclusive to engineering at all. There was only, including myself, there's only 4 or 5 of us that were engineers at all. It's kind of crazy, but it's more of like a mindset rather than a background. However, NASA does prefer engineers or a tech person or like a physics, math, that kind of situation if you're applying to be a flight controller. But yeah, definitely would probably suggest engineering.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
So back to the payloads. I have one. This is my last question about payloads.
No, you're fine.
So if you could send any payload, any experiment that maybe it has been done, what would you do? You have the money to send it. You have the proposal.
I don't know. I really like the organic payloads, which is funny because I worked on a lot of additive manufacturing payloads. I mean, like 5, 6, 7 additive manufacturing payloads. And like that was what my background was in, so I get it, whatever. But I would like want to send like a Monstera to the ISS and just like water this every 4 days and see how big it gets, right? Like, can you imagine the leaves just like
it just like explodes out in space or something so unexpected.
Yeah. Like, wouldn't that be crazy? Or just like, I don't know, a bird of paradise, like something that just is a big tree. Like, I think that would be cool as heck. I think that'd be cool.
If I was the astronaut in space trying to take care of that science experiment, I would probably kill it no matter what, because I'm not good at taking care of my plants.
Do you guys have the app Planta?
No, what is it?
But I think I need to get it.
So I have like a ton of plants. Okay, so this tells you like water your plant this day, or like tell me where you put it. Is there enough sun? Like it's amazing. I just imagine the astronauts with like their iPads, because they all have iPads, just like, okay, we have to fertilize the Monstera today, like in space.
They're like, I don't even have plants at home. I have to.
Yeah, they're like, oh, why did they make me do this? Actually, no, the astronauts always love the plants ones. They always love the plants.
Yeah, same. So my boyfriend, so this is a digress, but I made a comment. I was like, oh, you never buy me flowers. And he's like, oh, well, I bought you these little cactus, cacti, and you killed them. So I didn't think you liked flowers. And I was like,
it's so hard to kill
I was
cacti,
like,
Lexi.
Yeah,
flowers,
it's so hard.
Okay.
It's so hard. And I was like, that is a good answer, honestly, though. I was like, I didn't even know you saw them.
He got out of that one. He got out of that
He
one.
did.
Okay, fair.
Yes. Fair. Awesome. Well, so another general question, though, on plants. What is your favorite plant?
Oh my gosh, orchid. Orchid's my favorite plant.
Oh,
I love
beautiful.
orchids.
They are pretty. Yeah.
I'm really liking houseplants. Like, recently just really got into houseplants. Like, I have like a watermelon peperomia and like a monstera and a bird of paradise and I can't think of what the actual names are because I named all of my plants, so I like know the names. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We have like a snake plant. Like, our bird of paradise is named Bronco Henry.
Bronco Henry.
That's so cute.
That's so funny.
It's from a movie, The Power of the Dog, but not the point. Is I don't remember what they're actually called because I just remember their names. Pothos. So we have like 3 pothos. One is like really long. I love it. It's beautiful. Yeah, I've gotten really into plants recently, so that's weird.
No, wait, this is
No,
kind of a
it's
good
good.
transition because I wanted to ask, you mentioned the crazy sleep schedule and you said your advice for someone who wants to do this role is like make sure you're good at changing your sleep cycles. So with this like crazy schedule, how do you maintain a work-life balance, if at all? And like what do you do to keep yourself sane when you are at home and not being, you know, on call on the console?
I sleep a lot. I try to remember that I am a human. Walks, hot girl walks,
Oh yeah.
outside and eating well, sleeping. That's the big thing. Is like make sure that you're sleeping enough, drinking enough water. Like that like yourself is a little Tamagotchi or like a tiny little house plant. Just like water, walks, and food. Okay.
Walks and food.
I always would kill my Tamagotchis, you guys. This is not a good sign.
You're like talking to
Don't do tip work, Liddy.
You're like, okay, she can't keep a Tamagotchi alive. She can't keep cacti alive. She's like, who am I talking to?
We're struggling.
That's so funny. But going back, so about the sleep schedule, I just realized we never really kind of talked about the shift schedules, and I kind of mentioned before that I know that it varies per site. Can you kind of give an overview of the time frames?
Yeah, so Huntsville has 3 shifts, and we have 7 to 3, 3 to 11, and then 11 to 7. So you have to get there an hour early. Whenever I would work on the day shift, which is 6 to 3, I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get there. Oh, sorry, 7 to 3. I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning because I had to be there at 6 o'clock to get ready on console for the shift. So I had to be ready, there, prepared, have my prep sheet and everything done, and be there at 6 to listen to the loops and to read the logs. So it's a lot.
Yeah, sounds like
A lot
it.
of prep work. Yeah, a lot of prep work. And people who have been doing it for a long time, like many years, like they don't prep as much, but since I hadn't been doing it very long, I prepped like a lot. Like 6 to 8 hours per shift before the shift. Like,
Oh my gosh.
is a lot.
Yeah, I was
Wow.
gonna ask which shift do you prefer, if any?
I actually prefer the second shift, which is swings. So that's 3 to 11 p.m. That's my favorite shift. And then my second favorite shift is midnights. So 11 to 7. I actually hated working days because I hate getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I'm not a morning person. I can't do it. And like when I get to console, I'm like, okay, I'm ready. And then we do a sit rep, which is like situation report, and like that's talking about what's going to happen that day for the operations director. So basically you tell them everything that's going to happen before it happens, and like pinch points that you're looking for, and like all of the hazard levels and everything. So it's basically just like a full synopsis of the day to the pod, the payload operations director, before we even start. So that was always given at like 6:50, 6:45, and I was always just like sitting at the console before, like, oh, I'm so tired. Like, I hope I don't mess up the sit rep, and then like let's just get to the shift. Let's do it.
So are the same amount of people on site at each shift, or does it vary? Like, it's kind of a dead at night on like the third shift, or how does that work?
Yeah. So actually, our day, or sorry, the astronauts' day starts on the midnight shift. So at 11 p.m. the astronauts wake up at like 1 to 2 a.m. depending on whether we're in daylight savings time or not, which is kind of funny, but it varies. So they start their day at 6 a.m., which is like 2 o'clock our time. So midnight shifts that's why I like midnight shifts so much, is because it's like a slow start and then you get into the payload. And then the day shift is actually like a hot handover. So the payloads, the operation's already going, and like there may be problems, you don't know what's going on. So kind of walking into your shift blind is day shift, and you're already like groggy because it's 6 o'clock in the morning, that's why I hated days so much. But my favorite shift is swing shift, and we have less people in the room, so we always only have one OC. We don't have the stowage people. We don't have the paycoms because the astronauts aren't awake at that time. So that's when they're sleeping. So we don't have the people that need to talk to them, basically. But we still have the data people, the OC, the director, and our RAC officers in case we have to send commands. So yeah, swings are always my favorite because it's more of like a planning situation. But then midnights, because that's when the day started. It was like a slow start. It was nice.
You mentioned in the beginning of our chat that you have had so many different roles, I feel like, while being at NASA. So is being a controller like your favorite one that you've had so far, or how does this differ or vary from other roles that you've had?
So when I was a co-op, I was doing additive manufacturing engineering, and that was really, really cool. But actually, I think my favorite role was working in the project office doing payload development, working with the payload developers and their side with actually developing the payloads themselves and the science. And then I went on to be a flight controller to better understand how those payloads are being, effectively delivered to the station and getting the science from them. So I would actually kind of think that my favorite role was actually the development side rather than the actual flight control side.
And then you mentioned earlier that you interned and then you also co-oped. Can you kind of talk about the difference in responsibilities? Like, were you able to get more into depth in your projects during the co-op? How did that kind of vary?
So NASA is pretty unique in the sense that we offer hundreds of thousands of internships. And I was an intern in 2016. So an internship for NASA is usually on a summer. We have lots of semester ones, but most people do it in the summer. It's 10 weeks. It's really cut and dry. Like you come to this center, you do your internship, you present, and then you leave. So a co-op, the difference in the co-op is it's actually called the NASA Pathways, and this is the easiest way to get a full-time job at NASA. So the NASA co-op is you do your internship in a specific branch, and then the next time that you want to come back for your co-op, you do it in the same branch. So it's basically, I've been a civil servant since 2017 when I was hired as a co-op. And then when I was at school, I was just on leave without pay. So I was still a civil servant. So it's basically you're a full-time, part-time, or you're a part-time, full-time person. And when you're at school, you're just not working, basically. It's kind of an interesting way to do it. But at the end of your co-op, after you graduate, you get a full-time job. And you're a civil servant. And when I was doing it, it was guaranteed. I think they've changed some of the rules now to where it's not so guaranteed, but it's pretty much guaranteed. And that's the easiest. That's why you see so many young people working at NASA is they all went through the Pathways program. And the Pathways program has been around for years, like 30, 40 years.
Is that something that you've always wanted to do? Like, were you someone who grew up and you're like, I'm going to work for NASA? Or like, who maybe introduced you to science and STEM and engineering and all this kind of stuff?
So yes, I've always been the person like, I want to work at NASA, like going down to vacations in Florida, like always begging my parents, like, let's go to Kennedy Space Center. And we never got to do it. Like I was in Florida so many times where I heard the shuttle come back in, like it's sonic boom, come back into Florida. And that was so cool. But my dad he really got me into, engineering. He made sure that I have a twin sister. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. We're identical. But he made sure that my twin and I always knew how to work on our cars. So change tire, change the oil, the things that everyone should know how to do. But I was learning them when I was like 4, 5 years old. Because we just wanted to spend time with him, and that was what he loved to do. That was his fun hobby. So he really got me interested in STEM and making sure that I knew how to work my way around mechanical things, and it really just jump-started the engineering mindset in me and my twin sister. She also has a bachelor's in mechanical engineering, and that really just like jump-started that. And I like I mentioned before, I started in computer science. Quickly figured out that I did not want to do that. Like I had mentioned, I am computer illiterate. I couldn't even figure out how to connect my headphones to my computer for this podcast.
Happens to the best of us.
But so I had took a coding class on my own, and I was like, wow, I hate this. Like, I hate this. So I quickly switched out of that, jump started in my maths and took like a bunch, like double up on my math and took Calc 3 and differential together. I also took trig and calc 1 together so I could like get ahead. So I actually ended up putting me almost a year ahead of my sister. So I graduated a year ahead of my twin sister, who is 6 minutes younger than me. Not 6 years, excuse me. 6 minutes younger than me. So that was really interesting, that we ended up being like so separated in our education because I literally just doubled up on math for one semester. Like, it was crazy how that like snowballed into graduation. But yeah, it was my dad, really. And I grew up in a really small place, like 20,000 people, very small. I think that's small. I don't know where you guys live, but I think that's pretty small. And I didn't really have any engineering women to look up to. I do now. I have a lot to look up to now, but I didn't then. And when I was in school to be a mechanical engineer, I was the only mechanical engineer woman I knew. And that was hard. Like, it was hard to be like, this is what I want to be, but I don't know if it's possible. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. Like, I haven't seen this done. I don't know if it's gonna happen, you know? So that was like a really also big part of like why I wanted to pursue engineering. Was like, I'm gonna do this because I haven't seen anybody else do it. Like, I don't know anybody else that's done this, so I'm gonna do it. And like, even when I was a senior in college, I was a class of 400 mechanical engineering student seniors. Like, we were all graduating together, 400, and there were 30 girls, and I was one of them.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's insane.
So for, any other girls that are experiencing the same thing, maybe it's not specifically in school, maybe it's in the workplace, what advice do you have to handle that whole experience?
Thick skin. Yeah, and that's something that I've really worked on developing. It's like, I understand that being a woman in mechanical engineering, being a woman flight controller, being a woman at NASA, being a woman in STEM is going to make me lonely. And that's fine, because I found like this community online that I didn't even know existed over the last almost 2 years. Almost 2 years now. And like, that's made the world of a difference, like absolutely completely different. But even being at NASA, like NASA Marshall, where I'm at, is it's like 40-60. So like, we're really close to having as many women as men. And that was really the first time I'd ever experienced that. It was crazy going from my community college to where I was the only girl in engineering, to coming to NASA where there were 250 interns and 40% of them were girls. I was like, this is like, I've never even met another girl engineer. Like, this is amazing. Like, I loved it. I loved it so much. And like, I really just took that and kind of ran with it, to make sure that there are other girls out there that I know that only have Instagram to turn to in this kind of situation. Because like me, they didn't have anybody else to look up to or anything. So like, that was really like a huge part of me like figuring out how to be the best engineering me that I could be. Was a huge, like, Instagram was a huge part of that. Like, it boosted my confidence, like, to see other girls also absolutely killing it, in what they're trying to do. And like, it just shows you that you are not alone, and you're not alone. Like, you just have to find that, I guess.
I kind of wanted to ask, because you have grown quite an impressive following on Instagram. Was there a significant time period where like you saw your account growing and you were like, wow, this is actually something that people are really resonating with? Like, do you remember that time in your life?
So, okay, I'll tell you a secret here. I have actually had my account for 10 years.
That's a long time.
My account is formerly Nail Art Ooh La La. I have been running that account since I was 14. I used to do nail art, and that's where I accrued most of my growth. In 2020, I realized, like, this isn't really me anymore. I'm working in a lab. I can't do my nails. So I made the switch to become a more STEM-focused, fashion-centric account. But that's where my following has come from, which is why my engagement isn't so great, but it's okay. But it's a very old account, and I do it because I love it, not because of the followers,
Sure.
truly. Yeah. So that's where most of my followers come from, but it's
As
fun.
you flash
It's a
your fun
journey.
nails to us, I love your nail art today.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, did you do it on your own then?
No, I did not
Okay.
do these. I have a wonderful, sweet artist here in Huntsville, and she's awesome. I have decided that I am lazy.
That's
I
literally
don't
why I
really
get my
do
nails
mine
done, because I
anymore.
am lazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm lazy, and I'll send you guys some pictures of some of my old stuff. When I got my NASA internship, I used to do really, really complicated acrylic, or sorry, not acrylic. Is it acrylic paint?
Is it the gel?
Yes, acrylic paint, right? No. So I would do it on my own nails. I used to have nails this long or longer.
Okay.
My own nails, which is insane. But I would paint on them with like my sister's acrylic paint, and then I
like
would let it
artist
dry,
paint?
and then I would paint over it. I would do yes, super complicated, insane stuff. So when I got my NASA internship, I actually did a galaxy with NASA and the meatball logo. This one.
Oh
This
my
one.
gosh.
That's awesome.
I'll send it to you so you can see it. It's one of my favorite ones, and that was probably one of the last times I did something super, super complicated.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, did you ever do any space themed? But now I'm excited to see.
Oh yeah, I did lots of space themed stuff. I'll send them to y'all.
Awesome.
Well, Lexi, I don't have any other questions, so if you have more questions.
We did talk a lot
We're good.
about a wide variety.
covered a lot.
I'm fascinated by the payloads. Like I just keep envisioning like a Barbie doll in space.
It was crazy. So what's so funny about the Barbies, right? Is that they were astronaut Barbies. I actually have them up there. Not the ones that were in space, but like my own personal Barbies. But what was interesting about it is that the Barbie hair is flammable.
Oh God.
So, yeah, a lot of things are flammable in space. A lot. So we have non-flammable bags. So they call them the Barbie pouches. And it's literally just like a nylon bag, right? Like the Barbies get put in. But it was just so funny. At the end of the procedure, it was like, put Barbies in Barbie bag. Like Barbie nylon pouch. Like that. Like non-flammable Barbie container. Like I wasn't even on console for that one, and I looked it up because I was laughing so hard because it was the astronauts just like floating the Barbie and like taking a picture, and they had them do like a voiceover and stuff. Like it was cool. It was really cool. It's just funny. Like it's stuff that you wouldn't even think about, like that you have to explicitly say, like put the Barbies in the nylon pouch so that their hair doesn't catch on fire. Like,
Yeah.
just stuff
Not
that
the
you
Barbie
wouldn't
hair.
think about. No, not the Barbie hair.
So did Barbie and like Nickelodeon and like that perfume company, did they use that content for like their social media?
I can assume probably. The perfume bottle and the slime was a very long time ago, like 5 or 6 years ago. So I don't know. And I don't know if the Barbie stuff has. Oh, I think it has. I think I saw a commercial with some of the Barbie stuff released.
I'm totally gonna look it up
But
later.
yeah, so like, yeah, most of the time they use it for like media kind of stuff, and like I said, anybody really, if you have the money, can send whatever you want. Like detergent companies have sent stuff into space, and like they're like, here, take a picture with it. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
Libby, we
They're
got.
not supposed to use it for marketing
Oh, I see.
because it's science. But after it leaves the ISS, we can't be like, now don't use that.
Yeah.
You know, they don't listen. It's fine.
Let's make some merch, Libby, and send it up to space.
Yeah, let's
Do it.
We'll start a GoFundMe. We'll make some funding. We'll send
Yeah.
merch into space.
You should send it with Joan when she goes on the space.
Oh, yeah, we should.
Blue Origin flight. Yeah, you should be like, hey, will you send my best friend's engineer podcast sticker to the Blue Origin flight?
She'll be
Oh,
like, yeah,
that'd be
let me
cool.
just shove it in my boot or something. I'll sneak it on.
Yeah. So they're allowed to bring like a bag of stuff. Like Cat Voltage, she was allowed to bring like a bag of stuff, and just like it flew with space, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's crazy that all of my friends are going to space.
I know.
Do you have
Gotta
any
get on the
plans?
list.
I know, right? Do you have any plans to go to space though?
No, absolutely not. No.
Is there a reason or?
Okay. Scares me to death. I'm okay with being the one on the ground, like, yeah, good job, you did it, woo, that's
Pop
awesome.
the champagne.
Yep, I'll be there at the end on the ground.
Watering my plants.
Champagne bottle. Yeah. Watering my plants that obey gravity. Yeah. I have
Obey
no.
gravity.
I used to have an interest in going to space. I don't really anymore. Now it kind of scares me more than anything.
Definitely.
Not that there's anything to be scared of. I'm just a big baby.
No, I feel that. I'd be scared too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm cool with working on it, but I would like to stay on the ground.
Awesome.
I get that question a lot. People are always surprised that I say no.
No, it's valid. I completely agree. But we usually ask our guests one last question to close out, and that question is, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your younger self?
That's a great question. A lot. I would tell her a lot. I'm trying to think of something specific other than just a lot. Not to give up. There was a couple of times that I was like, oof, is this worth it? It is. It is. I'd also tell her not to be married to your job.
Mm.
And I think that that's great advice for anyone. And Livy, I know that you just left your job, and I admire that about you, and I really am like trying to see what the future has in store for me. And it's kind of scary, and your content's actually been really inspiring to me recently. It really has. And yeah, I just make sure that she knew that her mental health was more important than literally anything.
Mood.
A mood.
Yes.
A big mood.
A big mood. Feel that.
Awesome.
I love that.
Well, where can our listeners find you?
On Instagram at @AstraSue, and TikTok at @AstraSue. I don't really post on there, but we're working on it. That's where you can find me.
Awesome.
Awesome. And as always, we will leave all of Susie's information in the show notes. And thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast today. I think we had a great conversation, and hopefully this will be really valuable for our listeners.
I hope it will too. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that awesome interview. Now I know everything about payloads, and now I'm going to put a savings account for my payload, which will be... I don't even know what I would send. What would you send?
Yeah, what would you send?
What
Tell us what you'd send.
I really liked her lettuce thing, so maybe something crazy like that. I don't know. I mean, some merch would be so fun. That would be... Imagine that content.
I know, right?
But, yeah. Would you have anything? Do you have any ideas what you'd send?
I wonder if they could send, like... Do you think it's, like, animal abuse if you send, like, a lizard or something up there? Like, I would want to know if an animal could be in space.
Yeah. You know what I have been seeing on TikTok? That dog story that died in Mars, they sent it to Mars, I think, or they did something.
They sent a dog to Mars?
It was so sad. Yeah. I don't know if it was Mars or it was somewhere. It was so sad, though. I was like...
Oh, my God. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I was like, maybe I won't send one.
Oh, maybe I wouldn't send that. But then, okay, my inanimate object response would be, I think I would want to send, like, makeup up there and see what would happen. Because isn't it, like, liquids, when you open them in space, they're, like, all weird? Yeah. I would want to know if people could put, like, liquid foundation on.
Yeah, you know what I'd send? I'd send my soup. I love soup for our listeners.
Soup!
I can't really cook.
You love soup!
I would get home from school and people would be like, Libby would make me mac and cheese. She'd be like, can you eat something that's solid?
My thing was mac and cheese.
Your thing was soup. Yeah. I just loved a good tomato soup after coming home, like after going out. That was my thing. It was so funny
the
too.
best
Like,
drunk
so
food,
random.
tomato soup. Gotta trademark it.
So let me slurp it up, put a straw. Just kidding. Oh my gosh. Okay. So that's what we would send.
I hope everyone right now is picturing you slurping up drunk tomato soup right now.
It's bonus points if it's Auntie Anne's bunny noodles.
Oh, that's the best kind of soup though. It really is.
I know. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I love that interview. I am so excited to see more from Suzanne in the future, so go make sure to look at her Instagram, her TikTok.
Yeah, and I don't know. I love talking to people in new industries because I feel like, and we say this so much, but any engineering job in any industry, you like first few months of the job is literally like learning a whole new vocabulary. And I feel like I could totally see that in like her responses when she was talking about like payloads and stuff and on console. I'm like, I don't even really know what all this means, but that's crazy.
I know. Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna have to ask because if we get too far into it, it'll be just like thermo class where I just sit there and I pretend what's happening.
We're gonna just smile and wave.
Smile and wave, boys.
All right, with that,
Awesome.
I think we can probably close out the episode. Just last minute remarks. Make sure you guys are sharing the podcast. Go ahead and leave us a rating and review if you like this episode. What else am I missing here? Facebook group. Join the Facebook group.
Yes, I love the Facebook group. It's been popping off. We did some coffee for the 4th of July last week, so make sure you go check it out. And you can find that all on our Instagram at My Best Friend's an Engineer. Same thing as our TikTok. But what is our YouTube, Libby? Tell us. Tell us what it is.
Our YouTube is BFE Podcast. And where can the listeners find you, Lexi?
You can find me at Engineer Lexi on Instagram and TikTok. Where can they find you?
You can find Libby at LibbyB on the Label on Instagram and TikTok. And with that,
amazing.
I think we can close it out. You wanna take it away?
Oh yeah. All right. I'm Lexi.
And I'm Libby. And thanks for listening to My Best Friends and Engineer.
Bow, bow, bow.